Chapter 4: The Guerrilla in Chiapas, National Liberation Forces. During the second half of the 20th century, the state of Monterrey had positioned itself as one of the most productive and outstanding in the national economic scenario. And this was no coincidence, since it had been establishing itself as an industrialized region since the Porfiriato period, thanks to the investment of private capital that was able to constitute the first steel foundry in Latin America, and that later, in the 70s of the 20th century, would pass into the hands of the state. Therefore, the majority of Monterrey's society was constituted by an industrial bourgeoisie as well as by proletariat, among other minority classes. In this context, a group of young university students headed by Cesar Yáñez, who were ideologically related to Marxism-Leninism and followers of the Cuban government, constantly attended the Center for Mexican-Cuban Cultural Exchange Fray Servando Teresa de Mier, José Martín, and later made contact with the Yucatecan journalist and owner of the magazine, ¿Por qué?, Mario Menéndez, who was a respected journalist of the Mexican left since he had maintained a close relationship with the government of Fidel Castro. Menéndez would be one of the first journalists to broadcast the meeting of the Organization of Solidarity for the People of Asia, Africa, and Latin America, OSPAAL. He would also conduct multiple interviews with the leaders of the most important guerrilla movements in Colombia, Venezuela, and Guatemala. Both Menéndez and Yáñez got in contact, probably through some Cuban intermediaries, and in February 1969, Cesar Yáñez, Carlos Vives, Graciano Sánchez, Mario Sáenz, and Mario Sánchez joined the Mexican Insurgent Army, EIM, Menéndez's organization that had the purpose of installing a guerrilla group and lead the country to the socialist revolution. However, the project failed after 3 months of being in the jungle of Chiapas. The group from Monterrey decided to break ranks and separate from Menéndez. However, they met two other members from Veracruz and Yucatán, Alfredo Zárate and Raúl Pérez. On August 6, 1969, after the bitter experience with Menéndez, the Yáñez brothers consolidated the guerrilla group Fuerzas de Liberación Nacional, FLN. The FLN structured a central command and divided itself into different zones of the country with the intention of creating an urban organization that could assist with medicines, money, weapons, and militants, the armed group that would develop operations in the Lacandon jungle. The choice of location was not random because Chiapas is one of the states with the greatest economic backwardness. In this region, the logging and agricultural exploitation would be controlled by a group of landowners who controlled the entire state. As a result, the social situation was one of marginalization and poverty since, for decades, the voracious decisions of the pre-government and collusion with the national and local bourgeoisie led entire communities of tzotziles, tojolabales, and other indigenous groups to migrate to the jungle, taking away their land and confining them to misery. The guerrilla group set up safe houses in the city of Monterrey and in Nepantla in the state of Mexico to collect resources. One of the main characteristics of its clandestinity would be that, unlike other organizations, the group would not carry out kidnappings and bank robberies to finance itself. On the contrary, they established a wide network of donations made by academics and university students who sympathized with the movement. However, after having remained anonymous, on February 13, 1974, the army discovered, detained, and tortured the members of the Monterrey safe house, among them Nora Rivera and Napoleon Glockner, who revealed the address of the second house located in Nepantla, state of Mexico. Members of the army and the police arrived in Nepantla, and, without a word and with unstoppable violence, assassinated Mario Sánchez Acosta, Demi Prieto Stock, Carmen Ponce Custodio, Alberto Ríos Ríos, and Alfredo Zárate Mota. The only survivors were Maria Gloria Benavides and Sergio Morales Villarreal. After the annihilation of the Nepantla House with the information gathered by the Mexican army, on February 15, the Mexican government eliminated the núcleo guerrillero Emiliano Zapata that had been installed in the Lacandon jungle in 1972 and where, as well as in the city, they had set up a safe house called El Chilar. For 2 months from February 16 to April 16, the members of the group were pursued and besieged until they were found and killed. The members killed were Cesar James Muñoz, Naur Guichard Gutiérrez, Juan Amado Guichard Gutiérrez, Mario Sáenz Garza, Elsa Irina Sáenz Garza, Raúl Pérez Gasque, Carlos Vives Chapa, and Federico Carballo Sabiaur. In July of the same year, the remnants of the FLN formed a second group and entered the jungle to search for their comrades, led by Francisco Yáñez and Julieta Glockner, who would try to find the disappeared first group as they hoped to find the founder of the National Liberation Forces, Cesar Yáñez, alive. However, during their long pilgrimage, they eventually managed to settle in the area of Las Cañadas. Unlike the first group, they began mass work among the indigenous communities in collaboration with the Diocese of San Cristóbal de las Casas, led by Bishop Samuel Ruiz, in a process that went from 1980 to 1983. The leadership of the FLN formed the Zapatista Army of National Liberation, ECLN. The history of this new guerrilla group will be discussed in another chapter. In the next chapter, we will talk about other important guerrilla movements that were formed in the second half of the 20th century. If you want to have an overview of the guerrilla movement in Mexico, click on the link that we will leave in the description, where we talk in more detail about this topic of vital importance to understand a forgotten fragment of the history of Mexico. If you are keen, like and subscribe and share it with someone who's interested in the subject. Our project is created by students, and to maintain this work, we need your help for editing, microphones, headphones, and translation of the scripts. If you want to support us, you can do so by making a donation through PayPal.